Hi everyone,
G'day.
and welcome to Parkside Live. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we're thankful that you're coming along for the ride tonight. And yeah, we hope that as we chat about first, fat, and doing well, which will
Yes.
become apparent as we chat, that it might encourage you in your walk with Jesus.
Yeah, well, I want to just start with a bit of a story. I was doing youth work in a small town, and in that small town there was a family, many kids, and they were doing their best to survive, and sometimes that meant doing things that other people wouldn't ordinarily do. And one of the children in that family actually started coming along to a program that we were running. And as we were dropping the kids home, and we started just talking about going to the local shops, and this kid said, "Yeah, I can't go in there." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Oh, I've been banned." I said, "Banned? What do you mean banned from the shops?" And he goes, "Oh, they caught me shoplifting." And I said, "Oh man, how long ago did that happen?" And it was, like a couple of months. And as we got talking, I said, "So, do you remember the first time this happened?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, actually." I said, "Well, tell me the story." And he told me how he was walking through the lolly aisle,
Yep.
and he saw something like a pack of lollies and thought, "I'm hungry, I want that, I'm going to take that." No expectation of paying for it.
Yep.
And I said, "Oh, yeah. And how old were you?" And it was something like he was 6 or 7,
Right.
like small. And I said, "And so did you notice anything like as you were doing it?" And he said, "Yeah." And his eyes kind of went wide. And he was telling me this story when he was 13 or 14. And he said, "Yeah, as I reached out my hand, there was this voice inside me that said, 'Don't do it.'" And I said, "And what did you do?" And he goes, "Yeah, I took it anyway." And I think that kid kind of went on a very different journey. And after we had that conversation, I lost track of him actually. But I think as we move through life, there are significant influences around us trying to shape us and trying to push us in this direction or that direction. And as you're watching this, you can probably relate to some people in your life that have tried to influence you, maybe groups of people that have tried to influence you politically, try to shape your character. Yeah? You're nodding?
Yeah, well, I think I've had a few people over the years in different things when the choices that I make seem to go against the grain or against what they think is, I don't know, logical or right. They've told me no on certain terms, and there's been that do I listen to them? Am I making the right choices or whatever?
Yeah.
There's kind of been that push and pull, but
Yeah, and there are those things. But I think a big challenge is us sorting out what's internal, what's us, and how are we going to listen. And as you're watching, perhaps that's something that you want to get better at, is identifying how do I know what path to take. And so, as Renata said, we're talking about doing well, first, and fat. And we're going to draw some inspiration from the scriptures, as we often do. And we're reading from the book of Genesis and just chapter 4. And it says this. Now, Adam had sexual relations with his wife. Great start there. Eve. And she became pregnant. And when she gave birth, she named him Cain, because with the Lord's help I produced a man. And Cain sounds like the Hebrew word for produced here. And then later she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. And when they grew up, Abel became a shepherd. A shepherd does...
looks after sheep.
Yep. Okay. So maybe not too relevant to your life situation right now. Looking after sheep. And Cain becomes someone who cultivated the ground, or what we would call a farmer. Yeah. Again, maybe not too relevant. And when it came time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best of the firstborn lambs from his flock and the fat portions. And that says this: the Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. And this made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. And then God speaks and he says to Cain, why are you so dejected? Why are you so angry? You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master. You say. Now, there's a lot there, and as you're listening to this, you may be thinking, what is this story about two brothers, one who looks after sheep and one who looks after cattle, have anything to do with me?
One who looks after sheep and
one who's a farmer. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. As we move through our lives, we encounter not just influences but powers. Right now, internationally, the leader of a nation that's above Mexico and below Canada has made some financial decisions that have effectively impacted the rest of the world. That's a power.
Yeah.
Now, we might not like that. We might be benefiting from that, but that is a power that we have to deal with in our lives. And for some of us, we might acknowledge the power of chaos in our lives. For others, we might acknowledge the power of pain in our lives. For others, we may acknowledge the power of hope.
Yeah.
And I think for some of us, you might be watching this and not have a belief in God at all. You might be watching this and maybe see a higher power more as like the higher power of Star Wars, some kind of force. And I'm not trying to be, silly, but we kind of see this higher power as impersonal. We can't relate to that. Some people maybe see a higher power as like a teddy bear, that when things are hard, you just kind of hold on real tight. Doesn't really do much apart from make you feel better. And I guess some people might see power as like this, or the higher power as an old man with a beard who's just kind of up there somewhere disinterested and disconnected. But what we see here, and this is what I believe, that there is a higher power, and that is a life-giving power. And we see this story here, that with God's help, I've produced a kid. And at the very basic level, these people are acknowledging the role of that higher power in their work. And I think if you're an employee, if you are running your own business, you know what it takes to move your business forward. You know what it takes to earn a promotion. And there's a lot of hard work there. But we also acknowledge that there is unpredictable things. There is a chance meeting. There is the fact that I had a better connection with this client than this person, and so I got the job. And I think as we move through our lives, there's an opportunity to acknowledge that there is something beyond what we can see, that there is a higher power. And for me, I believe in a life-giving power, the life-giving power that we see at work here. But then the question that leads us is, well, how do we respond as people in the world? If we acknowledge the greatest power as pain, how are we going to respond?
With fear,
Yeah.
like not engaging maybe.
Yeah. Shapes how we see ourselves, shapes how we move through to the future.
How we interact with others.
If we see the higher power as distant and not engaged, we may move through life that way. But we see this here, and then we see two examples there of how we move through our lives. And we see here the example of Cain, who was the farmer, not the cattle person, who has an idea. And as the story goes, they've got an idea. Look, I'm going to acknowledge this higher power in some way. I'm going to give some of what I've got. That's a good thought. And then we see a difference here, that this guy Abel doesn't just bring some, but the first and the fattest. The first and the fattest. Now, as you're watching this, you're probably not agricultural. Maybe you're not running sheep or farm. But if you're running cattle and you want to get a good herd, if you're running sheep and you want to get a good flock of sheep, how do you do that? I mean, given your extensive in animal engineering and husbandry.
Well, you would need to have like the healthy, best specimens and, get them together to produce what you are hoping is then the next, the best and healthiest specimen. You wouldn't use your ones that, have something wrong with them or...
Yeah, these are not the days of genetic engineering. This is... I'm going to try and find the best male I have, the best female, put them together, and hopefully hopefully is the word. It's unpredictable.
Yeah, that's right.
It's random. And that will then determine what I get to eat for this year and determine what I get to eat for next year. Yeah. And so what we see here is that Abel is actually stepping out into faith and saying, I'm giving you my future.
Yep.
Because the smart thing is to keep the best.
Yeah.
And as we go through our lives right now, we might not have sheep involved, but the smart thing is to keep the best. To take what you have and invest in your future. And yet what we see here is that this is a different way of living. That there is a way of living that says, okay, I'm going to give myself to something greater than who I am.
Yeah.
That I am going to take my future, my hopes, and I'm going to dedicate them to something beyond myself. And that's exactly what Abel does here. And as you're watching this, I wonder, what is the greatest thing that you are dedicating your energy, your life, and your resources to? There are many things that we can give our lives to that are useful.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm involved in outside of this is I run a business. That business helps to provide for my family. That is a good thing.
Yep.
But as I run my business, I seek to serve my clients and give them good service. But at the end of the day, that's me. If I do a good job, I get the reward for it. That's not bad, but it's not greater than me. That I choose, I go, we start here, we accept this project, this is what we're doing with the money. And one way that we can acknowledge that there is something greater than us at work in this world is giving ourselves to something beyond us. What are you giving yourself to at this point in your life that is greater than you? And I recognize that for some of us, even as we are talking about this, that you feel like your back is against the wall and that you are in survival stakes. And I'm not saying this lightly, but that's literally the situation that we find in this story, that someone is saying, I'm not sure what my future is going to be if I do this.
Yep.
Where will it go? And then when we process that, we can see that we're either living through fear.
Yep.
Am I going to plan and build my life towards a worst case scenario? Or am I going to move towards hope? Yep. Am I going to move towards something larger than me? Am I going to move towards this higher power in some sense? And what we see on the other side is that this other person has just gone, oh yeah, okay, I'll give something of what I've got. Yeah. And if you're watching this and you are seeking a connection with the higher power, this life-giving higher power that we read here, I don't know of a single moment where people have encountered God through comfort.
Yep.
And I don't think God is someone who enjoys watching us suffer. No. But I think there is something about moving beyond ourselves that opens us up to the possibility that my life is not the most powerful thing on this planet. When I give myself to a cause that is greater than I am, that I start to see a world beyond my little corner. And that it opens my eyes to possibilities. And we see that here. And you look at the outcome. Like, the person who took that hard decision, who said, "This is my future, I'm giving it to you," was rewarded. The other guy, angry, dejected, and downcast. And as we're going through here, I think it just underlines a challenge. Are you sitting in a comfortable space right now? Are you feeling unsatisfied with life right now? Because we read this and the inspiration is, let's move beyond ourselves into something else. And you can see here that as we seek to sort where do we go, that this is actually, it's a free choice. Like you get to choose. We get to choose which way we go. And Cain here is told, if you do well, or if you do what is right. And I think when we come to experiencing God, that a lot of people will see, if you've been around church circles, maybe that God is authoritarian, institutional, and controlling. And yet what we see in this story, I want to tell you that there is a good and a life-giving God at work. And right now you might just call that a higher power, you might call that the universe, but there's a good and life-giving God at work who gives you freedom to choose. Freedom to choose. And as we're seeking to identify those things, we've got two examples here. One choice actually ends destructively. Matter of fact, if you know this story, as you read on, one brother actually kills the other, and it's not just emotional destruction, emotional sadness, but actually kills his brother. And as we're looking at what voices do I listen to, we know what's a destructive voice. We know what is life-giving. And often the destructive choices are the easy choices to make. The life-giving choices are hard to make. And yet there is something within us that prompts us to move towards that hard choice. And we see that in this story, that is when we make that choice that we might feel hard, that is beyond our resources, that we encounter God, just like the character of Abel in this story here. And so the invitation is to experience this life-giving God. And you see these two examples here, and if you are at a point in your life right now where you are searching for a greater engagement with life, where you are searching for a greater engagement with a power beyond yourself, then we want to ask you to draw inspiration here and to trust in this life-giving, freedom-giving God, and simply say, God, I give you my life. Give me your life, the life that we've read about in this story here. And in that moment, you will experience, I think, the life-giving power of God through Jesus in your life. And like I said, this is a free choice. But if that's a decision that you're ready to make right now, then we invite you to just pray this simple two-sentence prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if that's a choice you made, we want to applaud you for taking the first step into what probably feels like uncertainty and unknown. We want to support you in whatever way we can. And if you simply want to connect, send us a message, drop us a comment, and we'll get in touch with you. And if you're passing through Southwest Sydney, drop in, join us around this table. We enjoyed lunch together actually down at the park today with a few friends. It was beautiful.